Have you ever wondered what would happen if Bowser was put in the defendant's chair and held accountable for his countless crimes against the Mushroom Kingdom and its citizens? No? Just me? Okay, I guess I'm the only one who has enough time to think about Bowser. But let's face it, Bowser's been living life like a villainous rockstar for decades.
Let's go.
Kidnapping princesses, torching castles, terrorizing the Mushroom Kingdom as if laws don't apply to oversized turtles. But what if they did? What if Bowser got dragged out of his lava castle and into a courtroom? Bowser's rap sheet is so long, you need a scroll just to get started. From petty misdemeanors to downright monstrous crimes, this guy makes the Mushroom Kingdom's legal system look like a joke. Stick around because I'll be ranking his offenses from relatively harmless to acts so outrageous they'd make even the most hardened criminals cringe. We'll ease into Bowser's rap sheet with the crimes that won't land him in a dungeon but could certainly stack up fines or short jail time. Well, Bowser has an annoying habit of showing up in places he has absolutely no business being. He is basically the king of uninvited castle visits. Whether it's Peach's castle, Luigi's haunted mansion, or even spacefaring stations, Bowser's raids disrupt lives and wreck property. He walks in like he owns the place, wreaks havoc, and leaves it worse than he found it. If raiding private castles carries a penalty of 1 year per offense, Bowser's looking at 24 years minimum. And speaking of stomping, let's talk about property damage. Bowser's heavy-handed, or let's be real, heavy-footed antics are a nightmare for Mushroom Kingdom infrastructure. Those iconic castles Mario explores, Bowser loves setting traps, smashing walls, and generally turning them into unsafe lava-filled hazards. Even during friendly competitions like Mario Kart, Bowser can't resist leaving destruction in his wake. Have you seen the state of Rainbow Road after a few laps? Let's do some math. The Mushroom Kingdom's architecture might seem simple, but those castles aren't cheap. A modest castle in the real world can cost millions, and Peach's castle? Easily worth 50 million or more, considering its size, grandeur, and that moat, because moats aren't standard even in luxury listings. Bowser has torched or taken over Peach's castle at least 15 times across the franchise. At 50 million per castle, that's $750 million in damages. And we're not even including the smaller structures like toad houses or those fortresses in Super Mario 3. If those cost about $500,000 each, and Bowser's obliterated dozens of them, we're adding another $25 million. That's a grand total of $775 million in property damage. And what does that mean legally? In the real world, felony property damage typically starts around $5,000, carrying a sentence of up to 10 years per incident. So, with Bowser's repeated destruction, we're looking at 10 years per castle, times 15 castles, that's 150 years just for Peach's home, plus a few decades for the smaller buildings. Bowser's already passed a lifetime sentence, and we're not even done yet. But that's not all. The Mushroom Kingdom isn't exactly known for strict traffic laws, but Bowser has taken reckless driving to the next level. He's constantly ramming into competitors, launching items like banana peels and shells, and outright ignoring basic road safety. If a Mushroom Kingdom cop ever pulled him over, the citation list would be longer than Yoshi's tongue. In real-world terms, reckless driving that endangers others could cost you a year per offense. Multiply that by the 24 mainline games where he's raced, Bowser's looking at 24 years in jail, plus a permanent license suspension. And we aren't even counting the number of times he's done this per game. At this point, you might think, okay, these are minor annoyances. Does he even deserve jail for this? Well, repeat offenses matter. Bowser's been wreaking small-scale havoc for decades, and these misdemeanors pile up fast. If the Mushroom Kingdom legal system worked anything like ours, Bowser would already be up to his neck in fines, community service hours, and short stints in jail. And yet, we're just getting started. Bowser's mischief goes far beyond just smashing walls or bending traffic rules. He's an absolute menace when it comes to more deliberate misconduct. For instance, let's talk about false imprisonment. Sure, it might sound dramatic, but Bowser has a knack for locking up anyone who stands in his way. Princess Peach is the obvious victim, but she's not the only one. Toads? Imprisoned. Mario's friends? Imprisoned. Even random Yoshis have ended up behind bars in his various castles. Each time he traps someone in his dungeons, he's committing a pretty serious offense. And no, putting a cute little key on the cage door doesn't make it okay. Let's estimate 50 prisoners per game over 24 games with 5 years per incident. That's 6,000 years in prison for turning castles into makeshift prisons. Then there's the small matter of slavery. Look, Bowser's minions are mostly Koopas, Goombas, and other bizarre creatures, but let's be real. How well does Bowser treat them? He sends them into battle unprepared, forces them to patrol lava pits with no safety equipment, and abandons them the second Mario shows up with a fire flower. You can almost hear the union lawsuits piling up. Bowser's treatment of his minions could easily qualify as forced labor or slavery. Instead of providing wages, safety, or basic dignity, Bowser keeps his Koopas, Goombas, and Chain Chomps in perpetual servitude. Let's say the Mushroom Kingdom has something akin to the US Trafficking Victims Protection Act. Take Chain Chomps as an example. Assuming Bowser's enslaved 100 across the games, each incident could carry a penalty of 20 years per offense under anti-slavery statutes. That's 2,000 years right there. Then there are the Goombas, 10,000 of them working without pay, safety gear, or freedom of choice. At 5 years per exploited worker, that's 50,000 years for labor violations alone. But Bowser doesn't just stop at mistreating his own minions. Let's not forget the environmental damage. He builds factories that pump toxic fumes into the air. Super Mario Sunshine, anyone? And converts pristine ecosystems into hazardous fortresses. The guy turned an entire planet into his personal battle station in Super Mario Galaxy. If Bowser lived on Earth, he'd be getting sued left and right by environmental protection agencies. Environmental violations can mean 10 years per offense, and Bowser's done this in at least 24 games. That's 240 years in jail for ruining the Mushroom Kingdom's ecosystems. And what about theft? Oh yeah, Bowser steals more than just Princess Peach's time and patience. He's hoarded power-ups, hijacked star sprites, and outright stolen kingdoms. Yes, kingdoms. If you think taking a few coins from an ATM is bad, try taking the entire economy of a magical realm. But these offenses might not sound as horrifying as some of his bigger crimes. Well, Bowser has made a full-time career out of abducting Princess Peach. Bowser and kidnapping go together like Mario and jumping. Since the very first Super Mario Bros. Game, he's been swiping Princess Peach like it's a seasonal event. And let's not forget the persistence. This isn't just a one-time, oops, I accidentally snatched royalty kind of thing. He's done it at least 20 times across games, spin-offs, and even Mario Party. At this point, it's less of a crime and more of a personal hobby. By legal standards, kidnapping involves taking someone against their will and holding them hostage. Bowser not only checks both those boxes, but he also throws in some psychological torment for good measure. Dragging her off to some lava-filled fortress miles away from home, guarded by an army of Goombas? Yeah, that's pretty textbook kidnapping, and not the kind that ends with community service. Peach alone has been abducted 24 times, not counting others. Each kidnapping could earn 20 years in prison, so just for Peach, that's 480 years. Add in other victims, and we're easily talking over 1,000 years. But kidnapping isn't Bowser's only major crime. There's attempted murder, and honestly, where do we even start? The number of times he's tried to incinerate Mario, Luigi, or anyone else who dares challenge him is staggering. Lava pits, spiked ceilings, giant hammers. It's like Bowser's running his own personal Saw movie. The Mushroom Kingdom justice system probably doesn't have a statute of limitations on actively trying to kill someone with a flamethrower. Attempted murder charges carry 15 years per attempt, and with at least 5 attempts per game across 24 games, that's 1,800 years for his fiery vendettas. And then there's the whole terrorism angle. Hear me out. Bowser routinely terrorizes the Mushroom Kingdom citizens for his own gain.
Mario! You want this?
Whether he's invading towns, destroying infrastructure, or launching full-scale assaults on peaceful lands, his actions fit the bill. He's basically the Mushroom Kingdom's version of a supervillain, minus the tragic backstory. With 24 major invasions, that's 24 life sentences, ensuring Bowser never sees daylight. At this point, it's safe to say that Bowser's crimes aren't just bad, they're downright horrifying. But there's still one level left to explore. The guy has basically committed war crimes. Bowser's essentially running a one-reptile army. In games like Super Mario Galaxy or Super Mario Odyssey, he doesn't just launch a minor invasion. He mobilizes fleets, deploys armies, and systematically devastates entire regions. bombing peaceful lands, forcing civilians to evacuate, using lava as a weapon of mass destruction? All of that falls under the umbrella of war crimes. The Geneva Convention would be absolutely fuming. Under Article 33 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, collective punishment and destruction of property not justified by military necessity are explicitly prohibited. Bowser's cruel destruction, forced evacuations, and lava bombardments across the Mushroom Kingdom check every box for violations. War crimes typically carry life imprisonment, and Bowser's committed them in at least 10 games. That's 10 life sentences for his battlefield chaos. And what about his destruction of public property on an unfathomable scale? Bowser doesn't just attack castles, he obliterates entire kingdoms. Bridges? Gone. Roads? Reduced to rubble. He's essentially turned infrastructure destruction into his personal hobby. If you've ever played Mario Kart, you know he even rigs racetracks with hazards just to make life miserable. Bowser doesn't just ruin lives, he ruins the very ground people walk on. Let's crunch some numbers. The Mushroom Kingdom has an estimated population of around 2,000 toads, based on game lore and visible NPCs in towns. If Bowser's traps endanger all of them during an invasion, he's committing 2,000 counts of reckless endangerment per incident. In the US, reckless endangerment often carries a sentence of 1 year per person endangered, so for every invasion, Bowser could face 2,000 years in prison. Multiply that by the 20+ games he's terrorized, and you're looking at a staggering 40,000 years just for the civilians he's endangered. But perhaps the most damning charge of all is genocide. Stick with me here. In the mainline games, Bowser doesn't just threaten Mario or Peach, he threatens entire species. Look at his track record in Super Mario Galaxy. In his quest for universal domination, he straight up destroys planets. Not just a couple of rocks, entire ecosystems wiped out in his pursuit of power. That's basically annihilation on a cosmic scale. Wiping out entire ecosystems is basically life imprisonment per incident, and let's assume Bowser's done it 10 times. This leads us to 10 life sentences. Speaking of cosmic domination, let's not forget Bowser's attempts to enslave entire populations. Whether it's mind-controlling his enemies, forcing the Toads into hiding, or drafting unwilling minions into his army, he doesn't see people as individuals. He sees them as tools. It's time to acknowledge the obvious. Bowser doesn't work alone. Behind every fireball, collapsing platform, and airship is a sprawling network of minions keeping the chaos machine running. From Hammer Bros to Magic Koopas, his army is massive, and it doesn't stop there. Bowser's operations also include advanced engineering, like building lava-filled castles and world-destroying airships. This is organized crime. In the real world, being the head of a criminal organization is a big deal. Under laws like the US RICO Act, leaders can be charged for crimes committed by their entire group. And Bowser's group? Massive. We're talking about tens of thousands of minions, not to mention his recurring partnerships with other villains like Kamek and the Koopalings. Let's estimate the size of Bowser's operation. Based on in-game appearances, his core army includes 10,000 Goombas, 5,000 Koopas, 1,000 Hammer Bros, 500 Magic Koopas, and countless others like Bullet Bills and Piranha Plants. If each member commits just one crime per invasion, whether it's theft, assault, or vandalism, Bowser is culpable for every single one. That's 16,500 crimes per invasion. Multiply that by the 24 mainline games, and you're looking at 396,000 criminal acts attributed to Bowser's leadership. Under RICO laws, conspiracy charges can carry 20 years per incident. Multiply that, and Bowser's looking at an astronomical 7.92 million years in prison. And if we want to level up, we can take a look at Bowser's repeated attempts at regicide. Take any Mario game where Bowser storms Peach's castle. He doesn't just knock politely and ask for her hand in marriage, he brings fireballs, armies, and an unrelenting determination to take her throne. In legal terms, this is high treason, and in most systems, high treason isn't just a hefty fine or community service. It's a one-way ticket to the most severe punishments. Assume Bowser's plotted Peach's downfall at least once per game, which includes 24 mainline games. If each attempt carries a penalty of 20 years for conspiracy and life imprisonment for attempted regicide, Bowser's looking at 24 life sentences plus an extra 480 years for plotting alone. By now, it's painfully clear that Bowser's rap sheet reads more like the villainous resume of a dictator than a cartoonish bad guy. We're talking about crimes so heinous that even the Mushroom Kingdom's justice system, which somehow lets Mario solve disputes by jumping on people's heads, would have to step in. So how do you even begin to calculate a sentence for someone who's literally destroyed planets and terrorized kingdoms for decades? Well, let's tally Bowser's criminal record. Castle rating, 24 years. Property damage, 150 years, castles, plus decades for smaller buildings, about plus or minus 50 years, equals 200 years. Reckless driving, 24 years. False imprisonment, 6,000 years. Slavery, 2,000 years, chain chomps, plus 50,000 years for the Goombas equals 52,000 years. Environmental damage, 240 years. Theft, not quantified, so excluded from the tally here. Kidnapping, 480 years for Peach, plus about 520 years for other victims equals 1,000 years. Attempted murder, 1,800 years. Terrorism, 24 life sentences, assuming 80 years per life equals 1,920 years. War crimes, 10 life sentences equals 800 years. Destruction of public property, 40,000 years. Genocide, 10 life sentences equals 800 years. Enslaving populations, not explicitly quantified but could be considered a subset of other crimes. Organized crime, 7.92 million years. And attempts at regicide, 24 life sentences, 1,920 years, plus 480 years for conspiracy equals 2,400 years. Adding it all together, the final life sentence would be 8,027,208 years in prison.
I judge the defendant guilty as charged. Court adjourned.
And that's not even accounting for fines, community service, or the awkward apology tours he'd have to do. Yet, somehow, Bowser keeps coming back. Is it his magical resilience, corruption in the Mushroom Kingdom's legal system, or is everyone just too exhausted from jumping over lava pits to prosecute him properly? One thing's for sure. If the Mushroom Kingdom had even a semi-competent legal system, Bowser's days of world domination would have ended decades ago. But how does Bowser stack up against other dodgy characters in the Super Smash Bros. Universe? Click the video on screen to find out. Until next time, take care and stay tuned.